that the more simplicity you have in your space, and the more you codify things, the more you just set things into standards, the easier it's going to be for your cleaners to go through with a checklist and figure out what is it that's here and what is missing. And I've had it, because a lot of times it really is just an innocent thing. You're in a rush, you're cleaning things up, you don't notice that you swept the TV remote. I have so many of all my TVs are exactly the same, and I have so many extra TV remotes because it happens. I don't know if anyone else has had this problem. Someone walks out with the TV remote. I don't know, I've never done it, but at the same time I can tell you that I buy probably 2 TV remotes from Amazon every 6 months. So it's something that the more of these things you can systemize, your cleaners can catch it, and often people are just an honest mistake and they can bring it back to you. You don't have to charge them, you don't have to do anything. So something to think about. So Coleman earlier was talking a little bit about this, and I think it's so important. One of the things when I talk about efficiency is the efficiency of your time. Script things. When you script, there's really 5 key messages that you need to send to a guest. There's a booking confirmation, there's check-in instructions, how is everything, just checking up on them. Usually I do that a few hours after they arrive, check-out instructions, and then a review reminder. Now, these are scripts because almost every guest needs exactly the same thing. If you are communicating with your guests and you're doing like handwriting every single one of these messages, you're wasting a ton of time. What you need to do is create a script, and the benefit of creating a script is that you can improve it as time goes on. So little things that always catch people when they go to your property, by scripting these things out in advance, you just duplicate them. It's the same thing for everyone, and you make adjustments to the script when you think it's necessary. So take these down. You don't need more than this. 90% of your communication is this, and the only thing that you should really be putting your time and effort into is the stuff beyond it. Things like, you know, what's the best pizza place? Hey, I'm going on a date night tonight. Where should I go? How long does it take to get to West Edmonton Mall by bus? A long time. That kind of thing. Those are the things that you really want to get into place so that you can do this. Now, the other last thing that has changed my business for the better is the review reminders. I always send these out, but I send them in a very specific way. The way that my script works is I say, thank you so much for staying with us. Reviews are super important to us. If you had a great stay, please rate us 5 stars. If you didn't, please send us private feedback. I don't want anything other than a 5-star, and so I want to encourage people to give me the feedback because it's so important, but I don't want them to give me that feedback in a public forum, because a lot of times it's really petty stuff, and a lot of times it's not really anything that impacts, like it's easy to fix or whatever. Usually they're pretty happy, but some people are like, you know, they had a good time, so they're like, yeah, that was totally a 3-star experience. You're like, 3 stars are terrible. Like, no one wants a 3-star, right? Like, if you look at your Uber driver and he has like a 4.2, you're like, you know, so 5 stars is the only thing that matters. So work that into your script so that you can ensure that you can encourage higher ratings, because those are really what matters. So the next thing is be smart. So what we want to focus on here is, once again, ways to kind of take yourself out of things. Work systems into place so that you don't have to be actively managing the day-to-day. So half of being smart is knowing what you're dumb about. By Solomon Short. I don't know who he is, I've got some random quotes today, but so that's what we're going to talk about is the systems. So what I always do is build systems around everything, and any time something breaks, I try to build a system to encourage that to never happen again. I do things like have backup codes on all of my locks. I have backup keys on all of my properties, and it's something that if anything ever goes wrong, I don't want to actively be dealing with it. I don't want to have to pick up and drive because someone is locked out of the property or someone forgot a key or whatever. The example I have came from a few months ago. I have keypads on all of my locks, and I was sick as a dog. I was so sick I couldn't do anything. I went to bed early, and I have a team of receptionists that answer all communication and things like that. And they have a certain protocol that they follow when people are locked out. And what happened is this guy was driving from BC. He drove all day and all night, and he got into the suite at, he got to the suite, I should say, at about 2 in the morning. He could not get in. The keypad didn't work. There's batteries in the keypad that had gone dead. And I have a system that should allow me to get notified when the batteries are about to go dead. For some reason, it didn't happen. So I had a system in place of, just tell them to go and get the key around the house. For some reason, that fell through, and he didn't get the proper message from my receptionist. I was sick, and my phone was on silent on Do Not Disturb. And so they tried calling me to see if I could help. And if I picked up, it all would have been okay. But then just to add insult to injury, there's 2 suites that are accessible by this entrance. And what happened is there were a bunch of girls that were drinking and pretty inebriated in the window, looking at this guy, scared because they thought he was trying to break in because he's standing outside the door at 2 in the morning and not leaving. So what I'm trying to get to with this whole story is that what I did is, instead of just waiting for the batteries to fail, I just go around and change the batteries on a regular basis. Those systems are so important so that you can avoid these kinds of things happening. And anytime it does happen, the next thing I did is I created a whole new system about, for example, like I told my receptionist to call me if there was any issue. What I didn't tell them is to call me repeatedly. Don't stop calling me until I pick up if it's an issue. If someone can't get into the suite, I actually need to know about this. And had they just called 2 or 3 more times, I probably would have actually picked up. So create systems around these things. Try to plan ahead for things. Look into the space and see how people are using it. People are coming from other countries, they're coming from other places. They don't always know what to do and how things work. Something that's really apparent to anyone who's living smoother for yourself. You want to take yourself out of it. In fact, the goal for all of you should be, how can I minimize the amount of time I actually have to be interacting with this? Because if you want to scale, or if you just want to maintain your sanity, because people are going to be showing up at 11 p.m. on Fridays and you don't want to drop what you're doing to go help them, systemize these things because it's going to save you a lot of trouble. So the next thing is buy quality. So I'm not saying that everything has to be really expensive. What I am saying is that everything has to be built to last. Don't go and buy cheap furniture just because it looks okay. You need something that's going to be able to withstand the most ridiculous things you can imagine. I don't know what people do in these suites sometimes. And Colton can attest to this because you were saying earlier, like, bleach doesn't get everything out. Like, as much as you try, there's some things that can't. I put Scotchgard on here because I use this stuff like nobody's business. It's $10 a container. Any type of fabric that you are worried about people staining, buy this stuff, spray it, and just cover it. Because what's going to happen is if you have this beautiful couch and you don't Scotch guard it, or you don't easy to use, if you're doing something like a pull-out bed, it shouldn't have to have a 15-point manual on how you're going to be able to pull it out. You really want something that someone can look at it and be like, that's how it works. If there's, for example, extra bedding or sheeting or stuff, put it somewhere obvious or make sure that they're aware of it. This is all going into how to do it. The other thing as well is buy commercial grade. All my sheets, all my towels are commercial grade. We're turning over suites 150 times a month. The last thing I want to deal with is someone putting their foot through a sheet set because it's been washed so many times in the last couple of months. So I buy commercial as much as possible, including kitchen supplies. If you guys haven't been to Hendrix Kitchen Supplies to buy stuff, just pick up what you're doing and do it. You have to go during business hours because it is like a more with regards to restaurants, but you can buy heavy-duty pots, pans, all this kind of stuff for nothing. $15, $10. It doesn't cost much to outfit a kitchen. They're built to last, and they're built for commercial kitchens, so they're actually going to last a long time. Don't overdo it. You don't need a ton of stuff. Just make sure that what you're buying is going to last. You don't have to constantly replace it. Okay. Protect and repair. This is actually one that I should mention with the cleaners. When you have your cleaners come through, they are looking for minor things. Little things that are happening in your suite. These are the things that you want them to let you know about. If there's a little bit of like a loose faucet, or there's a cabinet door that's hanging down a little bit. I'm sure many of you guys have heard in policing there's a theory called the broken window theory, that when there's a broken window, it leads to more crime into a place because people just say, oh, whatever, no one cares. So it's the same kind of thing at these properties. If you have little tiny things that are slightly broken, people are going to care less about your space. You really want it to be perfect. The more damaged corners, scuffed up whatever, stains, things like that, the next group is going to be less respectful because of what the place was left as. The worst, and prepare to be surprised. I think that's one of the best things you can remember when it comes to these properties. Always plan ahead, but you never really know what you're going to get. So automation. Automate any repetitive tasks that you possibly can. What you want to do is protect your time. You want to make sure that if there's anything you can do to take yourself out of it, you do it. Some things that I like, for example, is there's an app called If This Then That, IFTTT. If you have that, you can use it to do things like, I was using it, for example, to track access to my suites on a Google Sheet before I ended up having a new service that I'll get to in a little bit. Get these things out there so that you can go and take yourself away from it, and you can look at it at a later time if you need to. There are, as we mentioned earlier, there's communication services you can use if you want to. There's one that I'm kind of keeping an eye on. I haven't touched it yet, but it's called Smart B&B. That's using AI for, once again, those repetitive communications, things that just need to be sent every time. I'm not totally comfortable giving a robot all of my stuff yet, but in another 5 years, 2 years, something like that, you never know. So these are all things to keep an eye on. The other thing about automation is when it comes to things like maintenance. There's a lot of preventative maintenance you can do to a property well before anyone comes through it. Don't just leave it to remembering when the time comes. Set up a Google Calendar, set up something. You can use If This Then That on a certain day and a certain time, you text your maintenance guy to say, hey, come and spray for bugs or something like that. So take advantage of this stuff and try to do it as best. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is security. And hands down, I think this is the #1 thing that everyone should be paying attention to. So some of you may recognize the photos that I'm using. These were all taken from the news about 2 months ago when Edmonton made international news. An Edmonton Airbnb host had some people show up to a suite. They left for a few hours. Some other couple showed up in the suite, somehow got access, wore all their clothes, had a party, smoked unsmoked cigarettes, I guess. They left a bunch of unsmoked cigarettes, left a note saying thank you, walked out in the actual guest clothes, and then came back a little bit later and actually spent the night. So this happened in Edmonton. And I'm not going to pretend to know exactly what happened. I don't know how they got access. But at the same time, it just shows you that if you don't take security seriously, and I can guarantee you there's probably plenty of people in here that have like a key box that has a code updated once every never. There's people here that have keypads that they don't update the codes on. Up until a little while ago, I had keypads that basically I would keep the same code until someone sketchy showed up, and then I'd run over there and I'd change it up on them. That's not the way that you want it. So the great thing is today is that we are in a world where smart technology is cheaper than ever. Use smart locks, smart cameras, smoke sensors, noise sensors. Coleman touched on it a little bit earlier. Technology is cheap, so use it. The stuff that I like, and I'll actually have a list of it a little bit later, is that there's a keypad called the Yale YRD216. It's simple. It'll be on a thing a little bit later. It's simple. It's like $250. It uses a keypad. It has a backup key, so I can just put the key somewhere on the property under another code, so if anything ever goes wrong, there's always a hard solution. You can hook it up to a lot of digital devices, so there's a lot of virtual lock systems that you can use so that the code is automatically updated. It's $250 and it's the best investment that you can make. The other one that I really like, just because it's cost effective, is a camera company called Wyze, YWZE. Wyze cameras are like $45. They're smart enough. They aren't as robust as some of the $300 cameras that you get, but honestly, for $50, go and get a bunch of them and throw them around the property. The reason is that when something goes wrong, you can pull up the cameras and you can see what's actually happening. I've had it before where a guest is like, the code's not working on the door. So I pull up the camera and you take a look at it and you're like, you aren't at the door. And then, you can say it politely and you'll be like, oh yeah, I guess I'm at the wrong house and probably scaring a family right now. So you can, it's a simple thing, it doesn't cost much, I think everyone should do it. You can also use like Nest doorbell cams, things like that. They're more expensive, but the Wyze cams really are. They're $50, they're easy. There's also something called an Atatmo air quality monitor. I like this because you can read decibel levels in a suite so you can see if people are being loud. You can also use it for smoke, air quality. It can even do creepy things like tell you how many people are in the property because everyone breathes the same amount of CO2 no matter how big or small they are apparently. I didn't know that. So you can tell how many people are in a property just by reading the CO2 footprint. So the last one that I think everyone should have is smart thermostats. Just for your sake, the one I like is called ecobee3. It's really robust. It's really simple to use. The reason I like the ecobee is that you can set lower and upper limits, and you can password protect very specific things on the thermostat, and you can control it remotely. So you never have to worry about, for example, someone trying to screw you over by leaving the temperature at 12 degrees or 10 degrees in the middle of the winter. You never have to worry about people going too crazy where they heat it up to like 29 degrees looking at you, James. I don't know if you guys know James Cadell, but he really likes to turn the temperature up. If you go visit him in his place, it's always going to be like 32 degrees. So anyways, stop the Jameses from, costing you a lot of money on the bill. So from there, proper monitoring. So I really want to avoid parties. A lot of the properties that I have shared walls. It's not going to be good for everyone. I like to have really proper monitoring. I like having cameras outside. I like having sensors inside. I do not like having cameras inside because I do not want to be in one of those, once again, international media situations where someone's saying, hey, this guy had a camera in the property. You don't need to see what people are doing. You just want to know that people are being safe and not destroying the place. What I also like with this is that I catch problems before they happen. If you're noticing that there's noise, you don't have to go crazy. You don't have to kick the people out. At the same time, you can certainly go and set up a system where you say, hey, James, you're being kind of loud in there. We have a quiet time at 10 p.m. Please finish up because we're asking because the neighbors, I always say the neighbors are complaining even if it's just me. And usually, yeah, there's a trade secret. Usually people will be like, oh yeah, sorry, we're just finishing up, we're going to go to the bar or something. And usually it's not a problem. If you show people respect, usually they're good. If they don't show you respect in return, then you know that you have to watch it and escalate it. But it gives you the opportunity to give people the benefit of the doubt. So get this stuff in and then go from there. From there, the other thing, by the way, is that I've moved over for all of my suites to have automatic code generation. So every single guest has their own code. This works for a lot of different reasons, but most importantly, you don't want people to come back later just to clean the place out. As much as it may have saved Coleman some theft, you also don't really want to have a bunch of guests suddenly have a bunch of sketchy people show up at their door and use the key. So this is something that their code stops working the moment that their booking is over. So I've done that, and so I wanted to share this with you guys because this is probably the thing I'm most excited to heard of. And so they're a Canadian company, which I really liked. I liked all the cameras came up, so I like that. It's a Canadian company, which was a win on its own. I was trying and failing so much with these automatic code generation companies. They sucked. I spent more time than I care to admit trying to troubleshoot systems that just weren't really that effective. When I started talking to Aperto, I started liking them as people. It seemed like they were pretty legit. They have a bunch of money that came into them, so they're growing quite quickly. And I liked the direction that they were going. And then above and beyond that, when I did have problems, which I did when we first launched, I really appreciated that I legitimately had someone from the tech team actively monitoring all of my listings every single day to make sure that they could figure out what was happening. It took a few days, they had to manually update some stuff, but then they made it happen, and I didn't have to think about it. They made it seamless for me. So what they do is they allow you to automatically generate codes. That's the most baseline level, but what I really like about it is you have access logs. You know exactly whose code was used. If anyone ever does break in, their guest can't be like, I don't know who that was. It's like, well, they used your code. So I really like the access logs. They also do a lot of other stuff. For example, like you can hook it up to a smart thermostat, so you can actually monitor what the temperature is and also set it so that when they turn on, when they open the lock, the temperature goes up automatically. They also have smoke monitoring and noise monitoring that can send out notifications that if someone's being too noisy, you don't have to be the one to do it. You can be like, hey, they can get an automatic message being like decibel levels, whatever, or however you want to word it, just to kind of, once again, take yourself out of it. So I really like it. It's kind of like putting operations on autopilot. This is hands down one of the best ways that I've taken myself out of doing active management. I don't have to think about it. Everything is systemized and everything goes really, really well. So this is the products that I really like. With Aperto, if it's something that you guys want to go with, I wanted you guys to skip the line, I guess you could say, or going through like a standard queue or whatever. So I just talked to the guy that helped me set it all up. This guy named Axel. Axel at Perno.com. Just tell him that I sent you, Tommy sent you, and then you guys can chat with him directly if you have any questions or whatever. Everything else, honestly, just buy it on Amazon. It's nothing too crazy. Go to Amazon. That's where I get the Yale locks. Amazon is honestly one of your best friends. I have a story about buying 10 plungers on Amazon a little while ago, and Amazon algorithms are hilarious because when you're fitting out a lot of suites, you want a place where you can actually go. Like if you try to go into a Zellers and buy 10 plungers, they probably won't have them. So Amazon's really great. Same price as most commercial sellers. And so anyways, I bought 10 plungers. And I was buying 10 of a lot of things. And I really appreciate it. I went back to the plunger page a little bit later. And the algorithms on Amazon was